again. All right, so we're going to cover the endocrine system today. All right, so if you remember, we've talked about different systems, and your endocrine system is one of your control mechanisms. Okay, let me change that color. Yellow is usually kind of hard to see. Well, that's still yellow. There, that's better. Okay, so the endocrine system, hopefully you remember we talked about the ways that we maintain homeostasis. We need ways to control that. And so the endocrine system is one of those ways, and it acts as one of your control mechanisms, and it works with the nervous system to coordinate and integrate the activity of your body's cells. Okay, and it does that. It influences metabolism. It influences the way cells work using something called a hormone. And a hormone is a chemical messenger that's moved through the blood. Okay, we're going to talk about how this works. The thing about the endocrine system is it takes a little bit longer for hormones to get out to where they're supposed to cause a response, but once they do, the response tends to last longer than the nervous system. Okay, and as we're talking about this, just remember when you study endocrine system, it's called endocrinology. And so if maybe you have a hormone imbalance, maybe even diabetes, or maybe a thyroid disorder, some kind of hormone disorder, you may go to an endocrinologist. So I just wanted to throw that out there so you know who to go to if your endocrine system's messed up. All right, so let's talk about those two control mechanisms. So when we talked about you have a stimulus, you have a receptor, you have a control mechanism, then you have a target effector. Remember we talked about that with the nervous system, so maybe you feel cold and that you have a stimulus, this cold receptor sends a signal through an afferent pathway to the brain. The brain says, hey, we need to warm up. It sends an efferent message out to your muscles to cause you to shiver. Well, those are electrochemical impulses. Remember action potentials, remember resting membrane potential and the opening of sodium and potassium channels, and you get action potentials that travels through your body at lightning speed and causes a response. Okay, so fast action on muscles and glands is your nervous system. And remember, you have a central nervous system with your brain and spinal cord, and a peripheral nervous system with your nerves. Okay, the endocrine system, instead of having electrical current, you're using chemical messengers. So these are large chemicals that are then transferred through your body, and they're secreted by glands, okay, into the blood, and they're going to reach their target organ, bind to those organs, and cause some kind of a response. Okay, so it takes a little longer for a hormone to be released into the blood and then travel all throughout the body till it finds its receptor, causes a reaction. But once it does, those reactions tend to be a little longer lasting. Just a reminder, when I say endocrine, I don't want you to confuse that with exocrine. Okay, they're both types of epithelial tissue. You remember you had epithelial tissues, connective tissues, muscle tissues, and nervous tissue. So the endocrine glands are specialized epithelia, but they do not have ducts. They make hormones without ducts. Your exocrine glands, we've talked about those earlier, they make non-hormonal substances like saliva and sweat, and they go through a duct to a surface. So these are your endocrine glands. So we've covered these exocrines previously, so don't use those terms interchangeably. They're not the same thing. So where are some of those endocrine glands? Here's some listed right here. We'll also show you this in lab. You have the pineal gland and the hypothalamus and the pituitary all in the brain. You have the thyroid above the neck, or right above the larynx, or in front of the larynx. You have the thymus that's in front of the heart. You have your adrenal glands, your pancreas, ovaries in the female, testis in the male. But those are not all of the endocrine organs. There are other organs that also secrete hormones, like fat, adipose tissue. I have thymus in here twice. I'm just going to scratch that out. I've already got it. Stomach, small intestine, kidneys, heart. So we're going to go through each one of these through the semester and talk to you about the name of the gland, what hormones it makes, where those hormones go, what they do. Okay? When we think about the endocrine system, remember, it's a control system, it's an integration system. It's like the brain, it's just not as fast. Okay? So the things that it tends to regulate are things like reproduction, egg and sperm development, your period. Girls, when you have your cycle every month, how does the ovary mature and release an egg? How does the uterus get ready for implantation of possibly a fertilized egg? So reproduction. things like estrogen, progesterone, okay, testosterone, growth and development, things like growth hormone, maintenance of electrolytes, your sodium, your potassium, water balance, nutrient balance. Some hormones would be like aldosterone, antidiuretic hormone. Those play a role in balancing sodium and water. Insulin plays a role in balancing your sugar levels, glucose. Maybe from bone, you remember parathyroid hormone played a role in calcium. And we're going to talk about that. It also helps you regulate your metabolism and your energy balance, like thyroid hormone helps you with that, and also body defenses. Okay, so we're going to go through each one of the glands, and you're going to be able to find all of these as we move through the semester. I want to make one distinction. We talk about chemical messengers. We're talking about hormones, okay? And so hormones are long-distance chemical signals. And what I mean by that is they're released by one gland, and they travel throughout the body in the blood until they get to their target. So when the endocrine gland makes the hormone, it secretes it, and it's going to go into the extracellular fluid, but then it's going to go right into the blood or lymph. Okay, so the lymph, remember, if you think about where lymph goes, it goes right back into the blood system before it gets to the heart. It's going to get into the blood, and it's going to travel through the system until it finds its target. Okay, and so what do I mean by that? So remember how you had a neurotransmitter, so you had an action potential traveling down a neuron, and it would get to the end of the synaptic terminal, cause that flow of calcium, the release of the neurotransmitter, and the neurotransmitter would cross the synapse and bind to the receptor on the other side. Well, it's kind of like that, where you have a hormone with a particular shape. It's kind of like a neurotransmitter. It's got to bind a receptor, so the receptor is going to have a shape that hormone fits. So you'll have a hormone and a receptor bind, and that's going to cause something to happen, all right? And they're not going to stay bound for very long. It's going to inactivate pretty quickly, but whatever the response is going to happen, it may last a while. So whereas nervous system is quick, you get a binding, you get a release, you get a response, and then it's over. With a hormone, you get a binding and a release, but then the response may keep going. And we're going to talk about those different types of responses. But you also have some chemical messengers called autocrines and paracrines, and we'll have a few of these as we move through. I know maybe in the reproductive system we'll cover some. Autocrines are chemicals that exert effects on the same cell that makes it. Okay, so the cell makes it, and it just comes right back to it and causes that cell to do something. All right, paracrines are chemical messengers that affect cells that are near those. Okay, so when I say locally acting, so let's say this cell makes a hormone, and then the cell right next to it has the receptor for it. So there's a localized effect. So again, we'll probably have a few of these throughout the semester, but I just wanted you not to get those three terms confused. So I keep saying target. So what do I mean by target? The target is the cell with the receptor for a particular hormone. So that's a target cell. So if you have a cell, and so let's just say the hormone looks like this, okay, so this is the hormone, all right, so let's just say it's hormone H. This cell has the receptor that matches hormone H. That means it's the target. That means the hormone will bind to a receptor on that cell. Now, most hormones will have multiple target cells, okay, like growth hormone. Think about it. It makes your muscles grow. It makes your bones grow. So growth hormone, all those cells have that receptor, so it will make all of those things react. But some hormones only have a single target cell. And we're going to talk about some of those specific hormone target relationships and some of those hormones that are more generally effective. Most tissues will respond to more than one hormone. Okay, so most tissues have more than one receptor type. All right, so you may have a cell and it's got the little hormone receptor for hormone H, but it may also have a hormone receptor for hormone Y. Well, that looks like an X again. For hormone Y. Okay, so that will fit into this one. It may even have another one that is hormone, let's just say hormone Z. Well, it should be a square. Should fit into there. All right. It's trying to talk and write at the same time. So anyway, so a hormone may be specific to one cell. One cell may only respond to one hormone, or a hormone may cause many different types of tissues to respond. and tissues may respond to more than one hormone. Okay, so yeah, I know that sounds confusing, but you'll catch on as we move through the different endocrine organs and hormones. Now, these target cells are specific, okay? They have to have that receptor. So a target cell has to have the receptor for that hormone to bind it, okay? So if a target cell doesn't have a receptor for a particular hormone, that hormone will just float on by and not do anything. So for example, a hormone called ACTH is only going to bind to certain receptors that are found in the adrenal cortex. So ACTH is the name of the hormone. The ACTH receptors are only in the adrenal cortex, which is kind of the outside layer of the adrenal gland. Whereas thyroid hormone, you have thyroid hormone receptors on almost all cells of the body. Okay, so again, you'll get the hang of it. So when the hormones bind to these cells, what do? Well, they have several things they can do. They may alter plasma permeability. They may change things like membrane potential. They may do this by opening and closing certain ion channels. So remember how action potentials are generated? Something along those similar lines. You're going to do something that causes a channel to open or close and change the membrane permeability, or maybe even the membrane potential. You may cause the synthesis of other enzymes or proteins. So these hormones may make you make stuff. So they're not growth hormone. So you're probably going to be causing those cells to make more proteins, right? Hormones may activate and deactivate enzymes. They may shut something down, or they may turn them on. Hormones may induce secretory activity. All right, so I know one, we talk about prolactin. That's one that causes the mammary glands to start to secrete milk. Okay, stimulate mitosis. So mitosis is when cells divide, and so if you're going to grow, you need to have mitosis so that you make more bone cells, more muscle cells, so maybe growth hormone. All right? So they do a lot of things, but not every hormone does everything, okay? They may work only in one of these specific ways, or they may work in several of these ways. For a target cell to be activated, there's basically three things that have to happen. It depends on how much hormone's in the blood, okay? So the more hormone that's in the blood, the more target cells are going to be activated, right? How many receptors that target cell has. All right, so a target cell, it may just have one receptor, or it may have multiple receptors for the same hormone. The affinity between how the receptor and the hormone bind. So do they stay bound for long periods of time? Is it a real rapid binding, and does it last a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes? So what's that affinity? How readily and how long do they bind? And when we talk about the number of receptors on a target cell, that's actually not stagnant. That can change. Target cells can get more receptors in response to low hormone levels, which we call upregulation, all right? And they can lose receptors if you have high hormone levels, which is called downregulation. All right, so when you're thinking about how you're responding to a hormone, you have to know how much you have in your blood, how many receptors you have on the target cell, and how much affinity do those receptors and hormones have. Okay, and we're going to talk about this as well. This is just kind of an introduction today. And that's it. All right, so take that knowledge, and we're going to just build on that as we move throughout the rest of the endocrine system. Thank you very much.